Welcome back to the Get Your Life Back Summit. I'm Beth Genley, your host, and right now we're talking with Heather DeVore. Heather DeVore is a therapist and transformational life coach. She bases her work primarily on the belief that we are all whole, complete, and truly worthy right now. She helps guide her clients through the shame and limiting beliefs that block us from believing this to be true about ourselves. Heather is a certified Daring Way facilitator based on the work of Brené Brown, of whom I am a huge fan. And she's an NLP master practitioner as well as a licensed therapist. And the title of her interview today is Break Out of Perfectionism and Live Your Bold Life, which I just love. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you so much, Beth. I'm super excited to be here with you today and talk about all this stuff.
Yay, yay, yay. So perfectionism. I was just telling you before we started that I'm kind of a recovering perfectionist, but why is it so important to recover from it?
Why do we want to recover? Because, man, it just ruins our lives, you know? And as you said that just now, it popped in my head, like for so long, I didn't think I was a perfectionist until I got into the work of Brené. And because I always thought of perfectionism or perfectionist as someone who is constantly striving for this, the best grade and the best, and that wasn't me. And I was like, well, so I'm not a perfectionist. I don't, but the other side, which is also perfectionism, is procrastination. And I was like, oh, there's a little bit more. So it's like I won't start things or put myself out to do things because for the same reasons people are striving for perfectionism, to be perfect. And I love like Brené's definition of perfectionism. It's like, why reinvent the wheel? And so I'll just tell you what her perfectionism definition is. She says, perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. Perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfect, look perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame. So your subject for the summit is women, or the people who are just getting burned out.
Yes.
So where I think perfectionism comes into play is like you want your life back, we got to stop getting stuck in blame, judgment, shame, and all of that. And so it's different than healthy striving.
Uh-huh. So one of my most painful experiences with burnout was as I became more burned out, I really thought there was something wrong with me, like I had a character flaw. And I hid that as best I could because I didn't know how to talk about it or how to deal with that feeling. It was awful.
Yes. Yeah. Because when you're supposed to be perfect, we wouldn't want anyone to see those flaws because they might judge us. Someone might blame us for something, And so then there's the shame. That's like, I have to hide now because I'm not being perfect.
Yes. Yeah. In healthcare in particular, there's a lot of pressure to never make a mistake ever, right? Yeah.
Which, what does that do? Makes people probably make mistakes. Gosh. There's so many, I think, industries and arenas that it's like, oh, just be perfect who's perfect? Like, there's no such thing. Everybody's like burning themselves out trying to be this thing that it's impossible to achieve. So.
Right. So how do we shift out of that? How do we become an excellent person who's not perfect and not ashamed of not being perfect?
Well, it's super simple.
Yeah.
It's super simple. So what Brené talks about is how to shift from perfectionism, which is externally motivated, to healthy striving, which is internally motivated. And one of the steps in that process is building shame resiliency. Mm-hmm. So I hate to break it to you all, we don't ever get to eliminate shame from our lives. It's not going to go. It's an emotion just like any other.
Darn.
I know, it's a bummer. Like, people come on, they want to come to the workshops and things, and they're like, okay, I'm going to be done with this, right? And it's like, no. But what we can learn how to do is have shame resiliency. And that's around like really getting to know what shame is. And so first, she defines it, Brene defines it as the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Isn't that just like,
it's terrible. It's terrible.
Yeah. And so it's learning the tools. So the tools around shame resiliency is learning to recognize when we're in it. We want to avoid it so much that we don't spend a lot of time understanding when we're in it. And it feels, there's some similarities for people, but, it often feels like, for me, I describe it as like this warm shower of yuck, And so part of the building the shame resiliency is recognizing it's a very physical, I think she calls it a full contact sport. Like it's very physical response that we have. And so step one is knowing, oh, I'm in some shame right now. And then it's going, okay, what's important to me? What are my values? Like, what do I do next? And shame cannot survive the dark or the light. It feeds and thrives in the dark. So if you recognize, oh God, I think I'm in some shame, I'm going to go crawl in a hole and bury myself and hide under the covers, it's going to just grow. It's going to keep going. So it's the other step is like looking for people who you have cultivated a relationship with, where you know that if you call them up and you say, I am in some shame, they're going to understand. And they're going to be able to say, oh, okay, I see you. I hear you. Tell me what happened. They're not going to fix it. They're not going to shame you more. And so you've built up. And so it's like people who've earned the right to hear your story. And that's a very small handful of people. I think about maybe 3 people I would call up on the phone when I was in some shame. And that's because it's so easy to actually shame further on accident, not intentionally. You go, oh, that sucks that you really tried that. You shouldn't have done that.
Stop doing that.
Stop doing it. Yes. And so it's, again, so recognizing when it's happening and then reaching out to someone and speaking the shame, and so I think about an experience I had as a therapist. I have to talk to doctors and MDs to get, what am I thinking of, like authorizations for people. And so sometimes I have to do clinical updates and things like that, which is not my forte. It is not my strength because it's just, I don't think in such a clinical manner. I think in these terms, but a doctor on an insurance company wants very measurable goals and all this stuff. And so I was doing this review and this doctor was just like, well, maybe you should get a little more organized and maybe you should call me back when you know a little bit more about what you want to do. And I was like, I hung up the phone. First I was really angry. And then it was like, I suck. I'm the worst therapist ever. I don't know what to do. Oh my God. Bleh. And I sat there for a second and I was like, oh, I think I'm in some shame right now. Instantly found, I know 2 different therapists was like, help, and just, they gave me some guidance about like some things I needed, how to get more, to be more organized. And then just like, you're okay. You're a good, just people that will remind you. And so I didn't spend too much time in there. And so again, it's not that we never feel shame. It's how long we get stuck in it. How long we stay there and we just shorten the gap between I'm experiencing it and I'm coming back out of it again. So, and then it's, going back like and taking action.
Can I stop you for a second?
Yes.
That experience of getting non-constructive feedback. That physician may well have intended to teach you in some way something useful about organization or whatever.
Yeah.
But the way that it came across was so non-constructive is the kindest thing I can say about it, right?
Yes.
It's so common because we can do it ourselves if we're rushed or distracted. Stuff can come out of our mouths that is not optimal. Right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
other people do that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which could likely create shame for us, you know, like someone comes to you and says, oh, I had this hard thing. And you're like, you know, the thing that you don't want to say comes out of your mouth, and then you walk away and then you recognize it and you're like, oh, I did that. And so that's where it's like, it's learning how to circle back with people, you know? So if I reached out to a friend who I know she knows the shame stuff and we would talk about it and it didn't actually go well and she feels that, I am 100% confident she would come back around and go, oh, I didn't meet you where you needed to be. I didn't, you know, and can we try that again? It's learning, we get a second chance.
Yeah.
Because nobody's perfect. Again, we're not perfect. And, you know, I mean, and then I think about that same friend and like, we were at a conference or something. She was telling me this thing that was really big and important for her. And I went, well, blah, 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 my sister, or whatever. I kind of changed the subject. And later that night, I was like, oh, wow, she just told me this really important thing. And I just went in a totally different direction and did not validate or honor or, you know. And so I called her up and was like, hey, got to come back around here. So sorry. Tell me, let's try that again. And, you know, and that's not simple. That's not simple to do. Like, I felt uncomfortable about having to own what I had done. That feels yucky. I want to go back and pretend I'm perfect. So shame is everywhere. It shows up all over the place. And if we don't learn how to navigate it, we'll just be like covered in it all the time. And then be curious why we're exhausted by what we're doing in the world, why we want to just spend our time zoned out at Netflix and avoiding everything because we're like gooped out. Like, there's just shame, like shame gunk all over us. And that's exhausting.
So you were starting to talk about actions that you can take once you've called somebody and gotten some support and retrieved your feelings a little bit, I guess you could say. Yeah. You talked about some actions, and you've already mentioned one, which is calling up and saying, let's do a do-over. Let's try that again.
Yes.
And it's you that's something non-optimal. But
yeah. Well, it's kind of just circling back and doing like, so with the example with the doctor, you know, I just spent a few minutes, wrote some notes for myself, called back up, got a different person. So simple. She was like, oh, that's great. Thanks so much. Boom, done. And I was like, oh God, you know. But so it's like leaning in and going, okay, here's the thing that feels scary to me because I'm so ashamed about and so afraid of the judgments and all of this stuff. And, you know, and I was also thinking about so I've hosted summits like you're doing. And I remember the very first one, there was this moment where I decided to do it. And then I was like, who's going to want to talk to me? I'm not who do I think I am? Which is the other side of, you know, shame is who do I, you know, we get past all the, I'm not good enough stories. And we're like, okay, we're doing okay. You know, da, 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 da. And then shame comes in the other side and goes, who do you think you are? Mm-hmm. And when I was hosting that first summit, I was like, who do I think I am? That anyone who's got anything to say is going to want to talk to me. And again, recognized what was happening, went for a walk, sorted myself out, and then did it anyway. Mm-hmm. You know, and so then with each person I reached out to, with each person I interviewed and started doing it, it was like, oh, okay, I can do this, you know, and so it's doing these things that we feel scared of. You know, we can sit and think about how we're not going to feel shame and we're going to do that. But if we don't take some action towards the things that we're afraid of, we're just going to sit and analyze it forever. Yeah. So, it's putting yourself out.
So I want to unpack a little bit some things that you've said because I think it's so important.
Yeah, I'm rambling all over.
Well, you kind of went by how exhausting shame can be and how much the temptation is to zone out. Yeah. And I was stopped for a second thinking about that because I've done that so much. I get worn out by shame and feeling inadequate. And then I just play a video game or read a book or, you know, hide in my room, whatever. And I know better, right? I definitely know better. one of my excuses is, oh, I'm an introvert. I need to recharge, right? Which is partly true.
Yeah.
And when I notice, oh, I'm undermining myself, and how can I shift this? How can I move this? Sometimes it's as simple as shaking out the body, right?
Yes.
Or going for a walk, you mentioned. Getting out in nature if you have that
Absolutely.
access.
Yeah. And I think even before that step is also not then shaming yourself for being in the place where you're stuck from the shame.
Right. It can get to be a very tight little spiral.
Very tight spiral. And so, just because, we can become like the most strong, shame resilient people, it doesn't mean I don't ever get sucked into my Netflix bed, cave. It's just sort of owning that that's the choice I'm making and going, you know what, it's okay. I'm going to choose this right now.
Yeah.
Because when we have permission, we will then have permission to choose a different outcome as well.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's like, you know what, I'm exhausted, I'm tired, I might be, whatever, and I'm going to just zone into Netflix this afternoon or whatever your thing is, phone games, a glass of wine or a bottle, all the things that happen that we do to numb ourselves. And it's just sort of saying, okay, but being conscious, like I'm choosing that, and that's okay. Because then when it's okay, it comes back around going, okay, is this actually still feeling good? Is this actually still meeting the need? Is it actually rejuvenating me? And maybe an hour or two would, 18 hours, 2 seasons of a show. And again, I keep bringing this up because guess what? Was just down that little rabbit hole about a month ago, and so then it's like, no, okay, when it was okay, then I got to say, you know what, I'm actually really tired of doing this, and I want to feel something different, and so the tight spiral of shaming yourself for shaming yourself for shaming it's like
So it sounds like the essential skill there is deciding that you are making a choice.
Yeah.
And allowing yourself to make the current choice. If that's, okay, I'm choosing this. I really want to watch this stupid show. I'm going to watch 3 episodes of it or 4. The heck with it, right? And tomorrow I will be back on track.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of that.
Yeah, and so the other piece that then comes in that Renee talks about, and she incorporates the work of Krista Neff in a lot of her work, which is self-compassion. So it's like, okay, here I am. I'm going to do this right now, and that's okay. Because then we are way more motivated. Shame is not a motivator.
Mm-hmm.
Saying what
I to use it as a motivator a lot.
Oh my gosh, it's so rampant how much we think shame is a motivator. If you look at, coaches on a kid's soccer field, or like shame, we think, oh, I'll just be meaner, harder on myself, and then I'll do that thing. It never works. It never works. But self-compassion does. So going, okay, this is just where I am right this minute. That's okay. And when I'm ready and taking ownership, like you said, ownership of the choice, then we get to say when we're ready to go, this actually doesn't feel very good anymore. I'm tired of being in my hole, in my cave, and whatever it is that you're doing. And I'm ready for some fresh air. I'm ready to have human contact. I want this now. And shame is like the worst. It's actually it's not a motivator at all. It's the opposite. It's the opposite of motivating. It keeps us just stuck.
Well, that's quite a double whammy to have it keep us stuck and sap our energy at once. It seems like, that's worth noticing. It's worth saying, oh, here I am again. All right, now what?
Yes. And just the ownership of it. Like when we can stop, like, because I think, and I would imagine sort of the listeners, like this population of people you're attracting to this are really like, go, move fast. And when we can stop for a second and go, oh, I'm doing that thing again. I'm running that same pattern again. Is that really meeting my needs right now? And sometimes, we're not that aware, and it's just like, oh, stop. I call it like no sudden movements. Just sit still for a second and breathe and go, what's actually going on for me? What am I really wanting right now by moving so fast or crawling in the hole? What's the real need I'm trying to have met? Because we all run our patterns, and we're about 15 steps into the pattern before we recognize those. Again, not that we're not going to keep doing some of this stuff. It's learning to shorten the gap between where we are and where we actually want to be.
Do you have any favorite pattern interrupters for the moment when you notice, oh, this is my thing that I do? how do
that basically? Yeah, I mean, I say that to myself a lot, like, oh, I'm doing that thing. And I think the more I say that, the more I recognize like the physical pieces of it. So I think part of it is just an awareness. And so that's what like all the things people are learning and talking about here is like, oh, okay, to start to have an awareness. Sometimes I've said to myself, stop, just stop, like out loud, like stop. And then I'll sit down for a second again, like just sit down, and I'm not allowed to get up out of this chair until I'm in a different state of being. I'm just going to breathe, feel my feet on the floor, just slow down for a second. But I'm trying to think of like, other like...
Well, it seems like you're kind of skating over one. Saying stop out loud seems like a great one.
Yeah.
Remembering that you have a body, right? When I'm really busy, when I'm really going, when I'm doing, I don't really feel connected to my breathing or my feet on the ground at all. So
yes. Our body is the best tool. It is going to communicate to us much quicker than this brain. And I get the brain's part of the body, but our physical responses. So you're right. That is another piece of like, if I recognize I'm exhausted, or if I recognize that my stomach hurts, or if I recognize like my shoulders are up to my ears. Oh, wait, what's going on? And that's again with the shame too of like, it is a physical feeling as well as an emotion. And so it's learning to recognize your body's telling you things and going, oh, wait, let's be curious about why my shoulders are up to my ears, or why my stomach hurts, or whatever, So it is it is learning to connect and listen. Our body is such an amazing tool. We just get in the way.
So I'm hearing stopping to notice, taking some deep breaths, and getting curious, and giving yourself permission, and making choices. Is that a good list?
Thank you. You just organized me. I mean, taking all the random thoughts and made it in absolutely. Yeah. Curiosity is the other very important tool, is when we can sort of stop and breathe and then go, something's happening. In her Rising Strong, she talks about like the first step is just of awareness, like, oh, something's happening and I'm willing to be curious. What's going on? What's happening? So what did someone just say? What story am I making up right now that's creating a lot of this response?
What does that mean? What story am I making up?
Oh, goodness. We make up stories all the time. Often we have reactions and we get into shame because of what we interpret some external thing being. So, we're sitting here chatting and you have a certain look on your face, and I could be like, Beth's not liking this interview. She's thinking I'm pretty boring, or, whereas you're just sitting there going, I'm listening, that is like, I'll own up to that one, is like, if I can remember I gave a talk one time, one of the first times I'd done that, and people sometimes just listen with very blank faces.
Yes.
And my insecurities put out onto them this story about, oh God, I'm boring them. I'm this, I'm that. Whereas then I got feedback after the talk. Oh, that was really great. I loved, all this positive stuff. And so that's what I mean. Like, we make up stuff. We interpret people's behaviors through our own lenses, through our own self-worth, and through that, and go, this probably means that you think I'm the worst speaker ever and you wish you hadn't asked me. And so then we make choices and behaviors from that story. So if I'm sitting here thinking you don't like what's happening right now and you wish you hadn't done this, I'm going to start hustling, going, oh, I got to make this better. I got to make this better. I got to make sure Beth thinks I'm good, and all those things, rather than just kind of hanging in here and just being myself and doing the best I can. And, so we then act upon the stories we make up if we don't learn to check them out. So the other way, it's not that I'm not going to do it, but if I had, maybe not on a recorded interview, but like to go, hey, Beth, was that, I just made up this story that this face you made and you interpret, and I'm interpreting that as you didn't think that was any good. Is that okay? Is that what you thought? And you're like, no, I was just intent because I was really interested. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So again, being curious and checking it out.
Again,
as we wind up here, I just want to run something by you that somebody said to me once and see what you think of this strategy.
Oh, nice.
He said, it takes some kind of Buddha strength for me to not make up stories. She said, I'm just not that skilled or that woke or whatever the word would be. That so when I catch myself making up a story, I acknowledge that I'm making up a story and I switch it to a good one.
Nice.
So, they're looking at me, they must be bored. Oh, they're looking at me, they're so fascinated, they're forgetting to put an expression on their face, right?
Exactly.
I'm so cool, right? Which she said, I know it's a placeholder, but it works for me.
Oh, I love it. That is a fantastic strategy. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, if it's in a situation which, like standing in front of an audience talking and you're making stuff up, I'm not going to go stop and go, please tell me, do you like me? That's not effective. And so, to turn that around and go, oh, wow, they're really intent on what I'm listening to. They're really interested. So, and to keep going. That's awesome. And our personal lives, like I think in, relationships and things like that, she tells such a beautiful story of like this. I'll be real quick about like, she's, busy in her life and her husband walks in and looks in the fridge and sighs and this is, she made up this whole story about what a bad wife, bad mother, and he was just like, I'm hungry and I didn't know I didn't know what to eat. She was like, oh, okay. Okay. So yeah, I love that one of just like sort of internally, because we don't want to run around the world like making sure we have to check every single thing out, because like that's exhausting and but to be able to just sort of do it yourself, so building some sort of the compassion for yourself to just go, oh, okay, that's probably actually not what's going on. I am a good speaker. They're just so intent listening to me. So I like that.
Cool. I'm glad to know it, to talk to a professional and have a sort of blessing on this, as it were.
Blessings.
So I'm curious, I believe you have a free gift for our listeners as well.
So I put together just like a PDF for you guys to really go a little bit deeper in getting clear about what perfectionism is, learning just a couple questions about how you define shame within yourself, because it's individual. And then we didn't get much into this today, but some information on how to really identify about vulnerability and the myths of vulnerability that keep us stuck. And then a little bit about empathy and self-compassion. And so it's just around moving through perfectionism and shame and using vulnerability and self-compassion. And then I also want to follow that up with I would love to give you all like a free 1-hour call just to chat and kind of explore where you're wanting to go and how to create your bold life.
Wow, that is really awesome. So how would they get in touch with you to schedule that?
When you sign up for the free gift, you'll get a link to the calendar and a little questionnaire I have you fill out ahead of time, and that will also, you'll get an email back that that gives you the PDF and a link to the calendar and questionnaire and stuff to get you moving forward.
Whoa, that is...
And I'll just say too, my website's just my name, heatherdevore.com.
Awesome. Awesome. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. That's going to be really valuable to some of us, I am quite sure.
I hope so.
I have to say, I am also a huge fan of Brene Brown, so I'm really glad that you're taking her work and moving it forward. That's really exciting.
It transformed my life, and so I feel like that's all I can do is just keep putting it out there because she's amazing.
Beautiful. Well, so are you. Thank you so much today. This was really fun.
That was super fun. That went by so fast. Thank you.
All right. Have a great one.
Bye, everybody.